Maya clutched the plastic grocery bag so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Inside, hundreds of pennies and dimes clinked together with each nervous step she took toward the pharmacy counter. Her best friend Sophia lay at home with a fever that hadn't broken in 3 days, and this medicine was their only hope. The pharmacist looked down at the small girl with skeptical eyes as she began counting out coins, one by one. "Please," Maya whispered. "She really needs this." What happened next would change both their lives forever, but not in the way anyone could have predicted. The quiet man standing behind her in line wasn't just any customer. He was about to reveal something that would shock everyone in that pharmacy. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button for more real, emotional, life-changing stories like this. And let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalk as 12-year-old Maya Rodriguez hurried through the streets of downtown Riverside. Her worn sneakers slapped against the pavement with each determined step, and the heavy plastic bag in her arms bounced rhythmically with the sound of countless coins. She had been collecting these pennies, nickels, and dimes for months, finding them in couch cushions, under car seats, and in the forgotten corners of her aunt's small apartment. Every spare cent had gone into this bag, and today it would finally serve its purpose. Maya's destination was the large pharmacy on 5th Street, a place she had visited 3 times in the past week to check on the price of Sophia's prescription medicine. Each time, the number had seemed impossibly large for a girl whose family lived paycheck to paycheck. But Sophia was more than just her best friend. She was the sister Maya never had, the one person who understood what it felt like to grow up too fast in a world that didn't always make room for children like them. The automatic doors of the pharmacy whooshed open, and Maya stepped inside, immediately hit by the sterile smell of disinfectant and the soft hum of fluorescent lights. The pharmacy was busier than usual for a Tuesday morning, with a line of customers waiting at the prescription counter. Maya took her place at the end of the line, shifting the weight of her coin bag from one arm to the other. She could feel the curious stares of other customers, but she kept her eyes focused straight ahead, rehearsing the words she would say to the pharmacist. 3 people ahead of her stood an elderly woman picking up heart medication, a young mother with a crying baby, and a man in a simple gray suit who seemed to be waiting patiently with his hands clasped behind his back. Maya noticed that the man occasionally glanced back at her, his eyes lingering on the plastic bag she carried. She wondered if he was judging her, thinking she didn't belong in this clean, expensive place with her patched jeans and second-hand backpack. As the line moved forward, Maya's mind drifted to the events that had led her here. Sophia had been feeling unwell for over a week, complaining of headaches and fatigue that her grandmother initially dismissed as typical teenage laziness. But when Sophia collapsed during their walk home from school 3 days ago, everything changed. The emergency room visit had revealed a serious bacterial infection that required immediate treatment with a specific antibiotic. The prescription was expensive, far beyond what Sophia's grandmother could afford on her fixed income. Maya remembered sitting in the hospital waiting room, watching Sophia's grandmother count and recount the crumpled bills in her purse, the defeat in her eyes growing with each calculation. That's when Maya had made her decision. She would find a way to help, no matter what it took. She had rushed home and began gathering every coin she could find, calling in favors from neighbors, returning bottles and cans for deposits, and even selling her most treasured possession, a silver bracelet her mother had given her before she died. "Next," called the pharmacist, and Maya realized she was now second in line. Her heart began to race as she watched the man in the gray suit step forward to the counter. He spoke quietly to the pharmacist, his voice too low for Maya to hear, but she noticed the respectful way the staff treated him. There was something about his demeanor that suggested he was more than just an ordinary customer, though Maya couldn't put her finger on what it was. The man completed his transaction quickly and stepped aside, but instead of leaving the pharmacy, he moved to a nearby display rack of vitamins where he could observe the counter. Maya didn't notice this as she approached the pharmacist, her full attention focused on the task ahead. "Hi," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper as she placed the heavy bag on the counter. "I'm here to pick up a prescription for Sophia Martinez. I have the money right here." The pharmacist, A middle-aged woman with kind eyes named Mrs. Chen recognized Maya from her previous visits. She had been moved by the young girl's determination, but was concerned about what would happen when Maya discovered the true cost of the medication. "Let me check on that prescription for you, honey," Mrs. Chen said gently, typing into her computer. Maya began untying the plastic bag with trembling fingers. She had counted the money 17 times over the past 2 days, and each time she came up with the same amount, $47.63. She knew the prescription cost $68, but she hoped that maybe the price had gone down, or perhaps there was a discount she hadn't known about. "The total for Sophia's prescription is $68.15, Mrs. Chen said, her voice gentle but firm. Maya's heart sank, but she began pulling out handfuls of coins anyway, arranging them in neat piles on the counter. "I have $47.63, Maya said, her voice growing stronger with determination. "I know it's not enough, but maybe there's a payment plan or something? Sophia really needs this medicine. She's been sick for days, and her grandmother can't afford it. I've been saving for months, and this is everything I have." And the sound of coins hitting the counter filled the pharmacy as Maya continued to empty her bag. Other customers in line began to shuffle impatiently, some checking their watches and sighing audibly. Maya felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment, but she continued counting, hoping against hope that somehow she had miscounted and there would be enough. Mrs. Chen watched with a heavy heart as the young girl meticulously organized the coins into dollar amounts. She had worked in pharmacy for over 20 years and had seen many people struggle to afford their medications, but there was something particularly heartbreaking about watching a child sacrifice everything for a friend. "Sweetheart," Mrs. Chen said quietly, "I wish I could help, but I don't have the authority to change the price. The medication costs what it costs, and insurance doesn't cover it for patients without a plan." Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to give up. "Please," she said, her voice cracking. "There has to be something we can do. Sophia is really sick, and I promised her I would find a way to get her medicine. I can work extra chores, or maybe I can come back next week with more money. Please don't make me leave without it." The customers behind Maya were becoming increasingly restless. A man in a business suit tapped his foot impatiently and checked his phone repeatedly. A woman with 2 small children looked annoyed as her kids began to whine about the wait. Maya could feel their frustration pressing against her back like a physical weight, but she couldn't bring herself to give up and walk away. It was then that the man in the gray suit stepped forward. He had been listening to the entire exchange, and something about Maya's desperation and selfless love for her friend had touched him deeply. "Excuse me," he said quietly, approaching the counter. "I'd like to pay for this young lady's prescription." Maya turned around, her tear-filled eyes wide with surprise. "Sir, you don't have to do that," she said quickly. "I don't even know you." The man smiled, and for the first time Maya noticed the kindness in his weathered face. He appeared to be in his mid-50s, with graying hair and gentle brown eyes that seemed to hold years of wisdom and compassion. "Sometimes strangers are exactly the people we need to meet," he said simply. "My name is David Rivera, and I'd be honored to help your friend." Mrs. Chen looked between Maya and David with amazement. In all her years working at the pharmacy, she had never witnessed such an act of spontaneous generosity. "Are you sure about this, Mr. Rivera?" she asked. "Absolutely certain," David replied, pulling out his credit card. "Please charge the full amount to my card." Maya stared at David in disbelief. "But why?" she asked. "You don't even know me or Sophia. This is a lot of money." David knelt down to Maya's eye level, his expression serious but warm. "Because 25 years ago, I was a scared kid standing in a pharmacy just like this one, trying to buy medicine for my sick little sister with a jar full of pennies and nickels. A stranger helped me that day. And I've never forgotten the kindness. Sometimes we get chances to pass that kindness forward." As Mrs. Chen processed the payment, David continued talking to Maya. "What you've done here today shows incredible love and dedication. Your friend is lucky to have someone who cares about her as much as you do." Maya felt tears streaming down her cheeks, but for the first time in days, they were tears of relief rather than desperation. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to repay me," David said. "Just promise me you'll remember this feeling and help someone else when you get the chance." Mrs. Chen handed Maya the bag containing Sophia's medication, and Maya clutched it to her chest as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "I promise," she said to David. "I'll never forget this." As Maya prepared to leave, David seemed to be considering something. "Wait," he said. "You mentioned that your friend's grandmother can't afford the medication. What about follow-up care? Will Sophia need to see a doctor again?" Maya's face fell slightly. "Her grandmother is worried about that too. The emergency room doctor said Sophia should see a specialist, but we don't have insurance for that either." David nodded thoughtfully. "What's your name? And how can I reach you?" "Maya Rodriguez," she replied, giving him her aunt's phone number. "I live with my Aunt Carmen on Maple Street." David wrote down the information carefully. "I'm going to make some calls and see what I can do about getting Sophia proper medical care. This infection could be serious, and she needs to be monitored by a doctor." Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You would do that too?" "I would," David said firmly. "Every child deserves access to health care, regardless of their family's financial situation." After Maya left the pharmacy, clutching Sophia's medicine and David's business card, David remained behind to speak with Mrs. Chen. "Has this been happening more often?" he asked. "Children trying to buy medicine with pocket change?" Mrs. Chen sighed deeply. "More than you might think, Mr. Rivera. The cost of health care keeps going up, but people's incomes stay the same. Particularly in this neighborhood, we see a lot of families struggling to afford basic medications." David was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. "What would you say if I told you I was considering starting a program to help cover prescription costs for families in need?" Mrs. Chen's eyes widened. "I would say that sounds like a wonderful idea, but it would be expensive." David smiled. "Let me worry about the expenses. I'd like you to start keeping track of situations like Maya's. Document how often this happens, what medications are involved, and what the approximate costs are. Can you do that?" "For me?" "Of course," Mrs. Chen agreed, though she was curious about why this customer was so interested in such detailed information. David thanked her and left the pharmacy, but instead of going to his car, he walked several blocks to a small coffee shop where he could sit and think. He pulled out his phone and made several calls, first to his assistant, then to the medical director at Riverside General Hospital, and finally to a social worker he knew who specialized in helping low-income families navigate the healthcare system. Meanwhile, Maya practically ran all the way to Sophia's grandmother's house, her heart pounding with excitement and relief. She burst through the front door, startling Mrs. Martinez, who was sitting beside Sophia's bed with a cool washcloth. "I got it," Maya announced, holding up the pharmacy bag. "I got Sophia's medicine." Mrs. Martinez looked confused. "But mija, we didn't have enough money." Maya quickly explained about the kind stranger who had paid for the prescription, her words tumbling over each other in her excitement. "And he said he might be able to help with doctor visits too. He gave me his card and everything." Mrs. Martinez took the business card that Maya handed her and read it carefully. Her eyes widened in shock. "Maya, do you know who this man is?" "He said his name was David Rivera," Maya replied. "Why?" Mrs. Martinez sat down heavily in her chair. "David Rivera is the owner of Rivera Medical Group. They own this pharmacy and 5 others in the city. He also owns the urgent care clinic on 4th Street and has partnerships with several doctors' offices." Maya stared at her friend's grandmother in disbelief. "He owns the pharmacy?" "Not just the pharmacy, mija. He owns a whole network of medical facilities. He's one of the most successful businessmen in the city." As this news sank in, Maya felt a new wave of gratitude wash over her. Not only had David helped them when he didn't have to, but he was someone who actually had the power to make a real difference in their lives. Sophia stirred in her bed, her fever finally beginning to break after days of illness. "Maya?" she whispered weakly. "Is that you?" Maya rushed to her friend's bedside. "I'm here, Sophia, and I have your medicine. You're going to be okay." As Mrs. Martinez prepared the first dose of antibiotic, Maya told Sophia about everything that had happened at the pharmacy. Sophia listened with growing amazement, her eyes becoming clearer as the medicine began to work. "I can't believe a stranger would do that for us," Sophia said. "He said someone helped him once when he was our age," Maya explained. "He wanted to pass the kindness forward." Over the next few days, Sophia's condition improved dramatically. The antibiotic worked exactly as the doctors had hoped, and her fever disappeared completely. But even as her friend recovered, Maya couldn't stop thinking about David Rivera and his promise to help with follow-up care. A week after their encounter at the pharmacy, Maya's Aunt Carmen received a phone call that would change their family's life. The caller identified herself as Jennifer Walsh, David Rivera's assistant. Mr. Rivera would like to arrange for Sophia Martinez to receive follow-up care at no cost to her family, Jennifer explained. He's also interested in discussing some other opportunities that might benefit your family. Carmen, who had been struggling to find steady work for months, agreed to meet with David at his office the following day. She brought Maya along, both of them nervous about meeting the man who had shown them such unexpected kindness. David's office was located on the top floor of a sleek building downtown, with floor-to-a-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. But despite the impressive surroundings, David himself was just as warm and approachable as he had been in the pharmacy. "Maya," he said, standing up from behind his desk to greet them. "I'm so glad you could come. How is Sophia feeling?" "Much better," Maya replied. "The medicine worked perfectly, and her fever is completely gone." "That's wonderful news," David said, gesturing for them to sit in comfortable chairs across from his desk. "I've arranged for Sophia to see Dr. Patricia Gonzalez, one of the best infectious disease specialists in the state. She'll make sure Sophia has completely recovered and doesn't need any additional treatment." Carmen looked overwhelmed. "Mr. Rivera, I don't know how to thank you. We could never afford to see a specialist." "Please, call me David," he said. "And there's actually something else I'd like to discuss with you. Maya mentioned that you've been looking for work?" Carmen nodded. "I've been unemployed for 3 months. I've been applying everywhere, but it's been difficult to find something that pays enough and has the flexibility I need to care for Maya." David leaned forward in his chair. "I've been thinking about expanding our patient assistance program, and I need someone to manage it. The job would involve identifying families who need help with medical expenses, coordinating with healthcare providers, and managing the administrative side of the program. Are you interested in hearing more?" Carmen's eyes filled with tears. "You would offer me a job? But you don't even know me." "I know that you're raising your niece as your own child," David said. "I know that Maya learned her compassion and determination from somewhere, and I suspect it was from you. I also know that you understand firsthand what it's like to struggle with healthcare costs, which would make you perfect for this position." Maya watched in amazement as her aunt's face transformed from worry to hope. For months, Carmen had been stressed about money, staying up late filling out job applications and worrying about how they would pay their bills. The idea that this stranger would not only help with Sophia's medical care, but also offer Carmen a job, seemed too good to be true. "What would the job involve exactly?" Carmen asked. David spent the next hour outlining his vision for the patient assistance program. He wanted to create a comprehensive system that would help low-income families access not just prescription medications, but also doctor visits, diagnostic tests, and specialized care. The program would be funded through his medical group's profits and administered by someone who understood the challenges faced by struggling families. The salary would be $45,000 per year, plus full health insurance for you and Maya, David explained. You'd work primarily during school hours, with some flexibility for evening and weekend events. And there would be opportunities for advancement as the program grows. Carmen was speechless. The salary was more than she had ever earned in her life, and the health insurance alone would be life-changing for their family. "Why are you doing this?" she asked finally. David was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the city below. "When I was 12 years old, my family lived in a one-bedroom apartment not far from here. My father had left, and my mother was working 2 jobs to support me and my younger sister. When my sister got sick with pneumonia, we couldn't afford the medicine she needed." End quote. He turned back to face them, his expression serious. I remember standing in that pharmacy, counting out coins just like Maya did, begging the pharmacist to let me take the medicine and promising to pay the rest later. A businessman named Robert Chen, who owned several restaurants in the area, heard me pleading and paid for my sister's prescription. Maya gasped. Mrs. Chen at the pharmacy, is she related to him? David smiled. She's his daughter-in-law. When I told her about our encounter, she remembered her father-in-law telling that story. It's a small world sometimes. He continued his story. Mr. Chen didn't just pay for the medicine. He offered my mother a job as a manager at one of his restaurants. And he helped me get a scholarship to attend business school. Everything I have today can be traced back to that moment when a stranger decided to help a desperate family. Carmen wiped tears from her eyes. And now, you want to do the same for other families. I've been successful beyond my wildest dreams, David said. I have more money than I could spend in several lifetimes, but wealth is meaningless if you don't use it to make a difference. When I saw Maya in that pharmacy, it was like looking at myself 25 years ago. I knew I had to help, but I also realized this was my chance to create something bigger. Maya had been listening to this conversation with growing understanding. You want to help lots of families like ours. Exactly, David said. And I want your aunt to help me figure out how to do it most effectively. Carmen accepted the job offer immediately, and within 2 weeks, she was working out of a small office in David's building, developing protocols for the patient assistance program. Her first task was to partner with local pharmacies, clinics, and hospitals to identify families in need of help. The program, which they named Healing Hands, launched officially 3 months later. By its first anniversary, it had helped over 500 families access essential healthcare services. Carmen proved to be extraordinarily good at her job, combining her natural empathy with strong organizational skills to create a program that truly met the needs of struggling families. Maya, meanwhile, threw herself into supporting the program as a volunteer. She created a peer support network for children whose families were receiving assistance, organizing activities, and providing emotional support to kids who were dealing with serious family health issues. Her own experience with Sophia's illness had taught her how frightening and isolating it could be when someone you love is sick and you feel powerless to help. Sophia recovered completely from her infection and never experienced any lingering effects. But the experience had changed her perspective on life and inspired her to pursue a career in medicine. She volunteered at local clinics throughout high school and was accepted to pre-med programs at several prestigious universities. I want to be the doctor that helps families like ours, Sophia told Maya during their senior year of high school. I want to make sure that no child ever has to worry about whether they can afford to get well. Maya was accepted to the state university with a full scholarship, planning to study social work and nonprofit management. She intended to eventually take over the Healing Hands program from her aunt, expanding it to serve even more families throughout the region. The night before Maya left for college, David invited her and Carmen to dinner at his house, a modest but comfortable home in a quiet neighborhood. Despite his wealth, David lived simply, preferring to invest his money in helping others rather than luxury for himself. I have something for you, David said after dinner, handing Maya a small wrapped package. Inside was a silver bracelet, similar to the one Maya had sold to raise money for Sophia's medicine. I asked your aunt about the bracelet you sold, David explained. She told me it was from your mother. I had this one made with an inscription. Maya read the inscription aloud. Kindness creates ripples that become waves. Your act of love for Sophia created ripples that became waves, David said. You inspired me to create the Healing Hands program, which has now helped hundreds of families. Your aunt found meaningful work that uses her talents and provides for your family. Sophia discovered her calling to become a doctor. All of this started with your decision to collect coins for a friend's medicine. Maya hugged David tightly, this man who had become like a grandfather to her over the past several years. Thank you for teaching me that strangers can become family and that kindness is the most powerful medicine of all. 5 years later, Maya graduated from college with honors and officially took over as director of Healing Hands. The program had grown to serve 3 states and had partnerships with major medical centers throughout the region. Carmen remained as assistant director, and together they continued to expand the program's reach. Sophia graduated from medical school and completed her residency in family medicine. Her first job was at a community clinic that served low-income families, many of whom were referred through the Healing Hands program. She never forgot the fear and helplessness she had felt as a sick child whose family couldn't afford proper medical care, and she made sure every patient she treated felt heard, respected, and cared for regardless of their SEF. Ability to pay. David remained actively involved in the program until his retirement, serving as a mentor to Maya and continuing to fund its expansion. He never married or had children of his own, but he considered Maya, Sophia, and the hundreds of other children helped by the program to be his legacy. On the 10th anniversary of Healing Hands, the program held a celebration dinner at the city's convention center. Over 1,000 people attended, including families who had been helped by the program, medical professionals who had partnered with them, and community leaders who had supported their work. Maya stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd of faces representing lives that had been touched by a simple act of kindness in a pharmacy 10 years earlier. When I was 12 years old, I walked into a pharmacy with a bag full of coins and a heart full of desperation, she began. I thought I was just trying to buy medicine for my sick friend. I had no idea I was about to meet the person who would change the trajectory of my entire life. She gestured to David, who was sitting at the head table with Carmen and Sophia. David Rivera taught me that kindness is not about the size of the gesture, but about the willingness to act when you see someone in need. He showed me that one person's decision to help can create ripples that spread far beyond what we can imagine. The audience applauded as Maya continued. But the real lesson I learned that day was this. We all have the power to be someone's stranger in line. We all have opportunities to step forward and make a difference in someone else's life. It doesn't require wealth or power or special skills. It just requires a heart that's open to the needs of others and the courage to act. As the evening concluded, Maya found herself standing in the lobby of the convention center, surrounded by families whose lives had been changed by the program. Children ran around playing while their parents shared stories of how Healing Hands had helped them through medical crises. Medical professionals discussed new partnerships and innovative approaches to serving low-income patients. In the middle of all this activity, Maya spotted a young boy, perhaps 10 years old, tugging on his mother's sleeve. "Mom," he was saying, "when I grow up, I want to help sick people like Miss Maya does." His mother smiled and ruffled his hair. "Then that's exactly what you'll do, sweetheart." Maya smiled, thinking about the ripples of kindness that continued to spread from that day in the pharmacy. She thought about all the children who had been inspired by the program to pursue careers in healthcare, social work, and community service. She thought about the medical professionals who had been motivated to volunteer their time and expertise to serve low-income families. She thought about the community leaders who had been inspired to support similar programs in their own cities. Most of all, she thought about David's words from that first day. Sometimes strangers are exactly the people we need to meet. She had learned that kindness has the power to transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. And it all started with a 12-year-old girl, a bag full of coins, and a stranger who chose to step forward and help. As Maya drove home that night, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about her younger self, standing in that pharmacy with tears in her eyes, convinced that she had failed her best friend. She thought about the fear and desperation she had felt, and how quickly those feelings had been replaced by hope and gratitude when David stepped forward. The experience had taught her that we never know how our actions might impact others. David's decision to pay for Sophia's medicine had been spontaneous, driven by a memory from his own childhood and a desire to help a child in need. He couldn't have predicted that this simple act would lead to the creation of a program that would help thousands of families over the next decade. Similarly, Maya's decision to collect coins for her friend's medicine had been motivated by love and desperation, not by any grand vision of changing the world. But her willingness to sacrifice everything for someone she cared about had inspired David to create something much larger than either of them had initially imagined. This, Maya realized, was the true power of kindness. It didn't require elaborate planning or vast resources. It simply required people who were willing to act when they saw a need, trusting that their actions would somehow make a difference, even if they couldn't see how. As she pulled into her driveway, Maya made a mental note to visit the pharmacy on 5th Street the next day. Mrs. Chen still worked there, and she had become one of the program's most valuable partners, identifying families in need and connecting them with resources. But Maya also wanted to stand in the spot where her life had changed, to remember the scared 12-year-old girl she had been, and to honor the journey that had brought her to where she was today. The next morning, Maya walked into the familiar pharmacy, breathing in the same sterile smell that had greeted her 10 years earlier. Mrs. Chen was behind the counter, helping a customer, and she smiled warmly when she saw Maya. "How did the anniversary celebration go?" Mrs. Chen asked when she finished with her customer. "It was wonderful," Maya replied. "Over 1,000 people came, and we raised enough money to expand the program to 2 more states." Mrs. Chen beamed with pride. "Your parents would be so proud of what you've accomplished." Maya nodded, feeling a familiar pang of sadness at the mention of her parents. Her mother had died when Maya was 8, and her father had never been part of her life. But she had learned that family wasn't just about blood relations. David, Carmen, Sophia, Mrs. Chen, and all the people who had supported her journey had become her chosen family. "Mrs. Chen," Maya said, "I've never properly thanked you for what you did that day. You could have turned me away when I didn't have enough money, but you listened to me and treated me with kindness. That meant everything to me." Mrs. Chen's eyes filled with tears. "Mija, you don't need to thank me. Watching you grow into the woman you've become has been one of the greatest privileges of my life." As Maya left the pharmacy, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for all the people who had shaped her journey. But she also felt a renewed sense of purpose. The work of Healing Hands was far from finished. There were still countless families struggling to afford basic health care. Still children standing in pharmacies with bags full of coins. Still people who needed a stranger to step forward and help. Maya thought about the young boy at the anniversary celebration, who had said he wanted to help sick people when he grew up. She thought about all the other children who had been touched by the program, either as recipients of help or as witnesses to the power of community support. These children would grow up understanding that kindness was not just a nice idea, but a practical tool for solving problems and changing lives. This was how change happened, Maya realized. Not through grand gestures or dramatic interventions, but through millions of small acts of kindness that built upon each other over time. Each person who chose to help someone in need was creating ripples that would spread far beyond what they could see or imagine. As she walked back to her office, Maya began planning the next phase of Healing Hands expansion. There were hospitals in rural areas that needed support, clinics in urban neighborhoods that were overwhelmed with patients, and families all across the country who were struggling to navigate the complex healthcare system. But Maya also knew that the program's real power lay not in its size or scope, but in its ability to inspire others to act. Every family that received help through Healing Hands was also learning about the importance of community support and mutual aid. Many of them went on to volunteer with the program themselves, or to start similar initiatives in their own communities. This was the true legacy of that day in the pharmacy, Maya thought. Not just the direct help that had been provided to thousands of families, but the countless acts of kindness that had been inspired by the program's example. The ripples of that first act of generosity were still spreading, creating waves of compassion that reached far beyond what any single person could achieve alone. Maya smiled as she thought about David's inscription on her bracelet. Kindness creates ripples that become waves. She had learned that this was more than just a nice sentiment. It was a fundamental truth about how the world could be changed. One act of kindness at a time, one stranger helping another, one child learning that they had the power to make a difference in someone else's life. The story that had begun with a 12-year-old girl and a bag full of coins had become something much larger than anyone could have predicted. But at its heart, it remained a simple story about the power of human connection and the difference that one person can make when they choose to step forward and help. And as Maya opened the door to her office, ready to begin another day of helping families in need, she carried with her the knowledge that this story was still being written. Every day brought new opportunities to create ripples of kindness, new chances to be the stranger that someone desperately needed to meet. The bag of coins had long since been forgotten, but the lesson it had taught would last forever. That love, determination, and the willingness to help others could overcome any obstacle and create changes that would ripple through generations. This was the true medicine that Maya had discovered in that pharmacy 10 years ago, and it was a prescription that would never expire. Years continued to pass, and Maya found herself facing new challenges she hadn't anticipated. The success of Healing Hands had attracted national attention, leading to invitations to speak at medical conferences and policy summits across the country. At 28, she was often the youngest person in rooms full of seasoned healthcare administrators and government officials. But her authentic passion and practical experience gave her a unique voice in discussions about healthcare access. During one particularly memorable conference in Washington, D.C., Maya met Dr. Patricia Williams, the newly appointed Surgeon General, who had heard about Healing Hands through medical journals that had featured the program. Dr. Williams was intrigued by the model Maya had developed and wondered if it could be scaled to a national level. "What you've accomplished is remarkable," Dr. Williams said during their private meeting. "But I'm curious about the sustainability. How do you ensure the program continues to grow without losing its personal touch?" Maya had been grappling with this exact question. As Healing Hands expanded, she worried about maintaining the values that David had instilled in the program's foundation. "We train every new team member in what we call pharmacy counter moments," Maya explained. "We share stories of real families we've helped, and we remind everyone that behind every case file is a person who might be standing somewhere right now, scared and desperate, just like I was." Dr. Williams nodded thoughtfully. "Would you be interested in serving on a federal advisory committee? We're developing new policies around community-based healthcare programs, and your perspective would be invaluable." Maya accepted the appointment, though she insisted on maintaining her primary role with Healing Hands. She began traveling to Washington once a month, working with lawmakers and policy experts to develop legislation that would support community healthcare initiatives nationwide. Meanwhile, Sophia had completed her residency and was working at the community clinic, but she had also begun developing an innovative program that combined medical care with community education. She noticed that many of her patients were dealing with preventable conditions that could be managed through lifestyle changes and early intervention. "I keep seeing the same patterns," Sophia told Maya during one of their weekly coffee meetings. "Diabetes that could have been prevented with better nutrition education, heart problems that developed because people couldn't afford regular checkups, children with asthma whose families don't understand, environmental triggers." This observation led Sophia to propose a new branch of Healing Hands focused on preventive care and health education. Working with Maya and Carmen, she developed community workshops that taught families about nutrition, exercise, stress management, and early warning signs of common health problems. The workshops were held in community centers, schools, and churches throughout the city, making healthcare education accessible to people who might never set foot in a traditional medical facility. Sophia recruited other young doctors and medical students to volunteer as instructors, creating a network of healthcare professionals committed to community service. One of the most successful programs was called Little Healers, designed for children ages 8 to 12. Sophia taught kids basic first aid, how to recognize when someone needed medical help, and the importance of healthy habits like hand washing and exercise. The program also included lessons about empathy and community support, inspired by Maya's original story. David, now in his 70s but still sharp and engaged, often attended these workshops as a guest speaker. He would tell the children about his encounter with Maya in the pharmacy, emphasizing how one act of kindness had created a chain reaction that was still growing. During one such presentation, a quiet 10-year-old named Marcus raised his hand. "Mr. David," he said, "what if you're a kid and you want to help but you don't have any money?" David smiled, remembering Maya's determination despite her limited resources. "Marcus, some of the most powerful help doesn't cost anything. You can listen when someone is scared, you can share what you have, you can tell a trusted adult when someone needs help. Sometimes just caring about someone is the most important medicine of all." End quote. After the workshop, Marcus's teacher approached Sophia. "That boy has been through a lot," she explained. "His father is deployed overseas, and his mother works 2 jobs to support 3 kids. Marcus often comes to school worried about his family's problems, but he also shows incredible compassion for other students." This conversation sparked an idea in Sophia's mind. She began developing a program specifically for children from military families, recognizing the unique challenges they faced when a parent was deployed. Working with the local military base, she created support groups where kids could share their experiences and learn coping strategies. The military family program caught the attention of Colonel Janet Rodriguez, the base commander, who happened to share Maya's last name, though they weren't related. Colonel Rodriguez was impressed by the comprehensive approach Healing Hands had taken to community health, and wondered if similar programs could be developed on military bases nationwide. Military families move frequently, Colonel Rodriguez explained to Maya during a meeting at the base. It's hard for them to establish relationships with healthcare providers and community support systems. A program like yours could provide continuity and connection wherever they're stationed. This conversation led to Healing Hands' first expansion beyond civilian communities. Maya worked with military officials to develop a version of the program that could be adapted to different bases and could help families transition when they moved to new assignments. The military partnership also brought unexpected benefits to the civilian program. Many veterans who had been helped by Healing Hands on military bases continued to volunteer with local chapters after they retired or left the service. Their discipline, leadership skills, and commitment to service strengthened the program's volunteer network. Carmen, now serving as the National Operations Director, was amazed by how the program continued to evolve. "When I took that first job with David," she told Maya, "I thought I would be helping a few dozen families with prescription costs. I never imagined we would be working with military bases and government officials." Maya laughed. "I don't think any of us could have imagined where that bag of coins would lead us." But even as Healing Hands grew in scope and influence, Maya remained committed to its grassroots origins. She instituted a policy requiring all senior staff members to spend at least 4 hours per month working directly with families in need. She wanted everyone in leadership positions to remember what it felt like to sit across from a scared parent or a worried child. One evening, while Maya was volunteering at the original pharmacy where her journey had begun, she encountered a situation that reminded her why this direct service was so important. A teenage boy named Alex had come in trying to fill a prescription for his diabetic mother, but the insurance company had denied coverage. "Please," Alex was saying to the current pharmacist, a young woman named Lisa who had recently joined the staff. "My mom needs this insulin. She's been rationing what she has left, and I'm scared she's going to get really sick." Maya stepped forward, her heart racing as she recognized the desperation in Alex's voice. "Excuse me," she said gently. "I'm Maya from Healing Hands. We might be able to help with this situation." Lisa's face lit up with recognition. "Oh, Maya! I've heard so much about you. This is Alex, and his mother's prescription is quite expensive." Maya sat down with Alex and learned that his mother had recently lost her job and was struggling to maintain her health insurance. The insulin she needed cost over $300 per month, far beyond what their family could afford on unemployment benefits. "Alex," Maya said, "we're going to take care of your mother's prescription today, and then we're going to work on a longer-term solution. Can you give me your phone number so our team can follow up with you?" As Maya processed the emergency assistance for Alex's family, she felt the familiar surge of purpose that had driven her for so many years. This was why Healing Hands existed. For moments exactly like this one, when a young person was forced to carry adult responsibilities and needed someone to step forward and help. Later that week, Maya received a call from Alex's mother, Mrs. Patterson, who was crying with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "Alex has been so worried about me, trying to take care of everything himself. When he came home with the insulin and told me about meeting you, I felt like we had been given a miracle." Maya arranged for Mrs. Patterson to meet with one of Healing Hands' case managers, who helped her apply for long-term assistance programs and connected her with job placement services. Within 2 months, Mrs. Patterson had found new employment with health insurance, and Alex was able to focus on his schoolwork instead of worrying about his mother's medical needs. Stories like Alex's reinforced Maya's belief that the program's true value lay not just in the immediate help it provided, but in the relief it brought to entire families. Children shouldn't have to worry about their parents' medical bills or ration life-saving medications. When Healing Hands stepped in to solve these problems, it freed young people to be children again, to focus on their education and their dreams instead of adult worries. This philosophy became central to Maya's approach as she began working on what would become her most ambitious project yet, a comprehensive study of how medical financial stress affected children's academic success, performance, and mental health. Working with researchers from 3 universities, Maya's team surveyed thousands of families who had received assistance through Healing Hands over the past decade. The results were both heartbreaking and inspiring. Children from families facing medical financial crises showed significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, and academic problems. But those same children showed remarkable improvement in all areas after their families received assistance. Test scores went up, behavioral problems decreased, and measures of psychological well-being improved dramatically. What this tells us, Maya explained to a congressional subcommittee reviewing healthcare policy, is that medical assistance programs aren't just about health, they're about education, mental health, and economic stability. When we help a family afford medicine, we're also helping their children succeed in school and develop into healthy, productive adults. The study's findings were published in several prestigious journals and cited in policy discussions across the country. More importantly, the research provided concrete evidence that programs like Healing Hands generated significant returns on investment by improving outcomes across multiple areas of family life. Armed with this data, Maya was able to secure major grants from federal agencies and private foundations. These new funding sources allowed Healing Hands to expand into 15 more states and develop specialized programs for GYME-specific populations, including elderly patients, individuals with chronic mental health conditions, and families affected by natural disasters. The disaster response program proved particularly valuable when a series of hurricanes devastated communities along the Gulf Coast. Maya led a team of volunteers to evacuate the affected areas, where they set up mobile clinics and temporary assistance centers to help families who had lost everything, including their medical records and prescription medications. In a small town outside New Orleans, Maya met a family whose story reminded her of her own childhood struggles. Maria Santos was a single mother with 3 children who had lost her home and her job in the flooding. Her youngest child, 6-year-old Isabella, had severe asthma and needed daily medications that had been destroyed in the storm. "I don't know what we're going to do," Maria told Maya through tears. "Isabella has been having trouble breathing, but I can't afford to replace her inhaler. We're staying in a shelter, and I'm trying to find work, but everything is so overwhelming." Maya immediately arranged for Isabella to see a pediatric specialist and ensured that the family received a month's supply of all necessary medications. But she also recognized that Maria and her family would need ongoing support as they rebuilt their lives. Working with local organizations, Maya helped Maria find temporary housing and connected her with job training programs that would prepare her for stable employment in the area's recovering economy. 6 months later, Maria had completed a certification program in medical billing and coding and was working for a healthcare company that had relocated to help with disaster recovery efforts. "Maya changed our whole life," Maria said during a follow-up interview. "Not just by helping with Isabella's medicine, but by showing us that there were people who cared about what happened to us. When you lose everything, it's easy to feel forgotten. But Maya and her team made us feel like we mattered." The disaster response program became a permanent part of Healing Hands operations, with trained teams ready to deploy to areas affected by hurricanes, wildfires, floods, and other emergencies. The program also developed partnerships with national disaster relief organizations, allowing for coordinated responses that maximized the help available to affected families. As Maya approached her 30th birthday, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The scared 12-year-old who had counted coins in a pharmacy had become a national advocate for healthcare access. But she still felt most fulfilled when she was working directly with families in need. David, now retired but still actively involved in Healing Hands as an advisor, often remarked on Maya's growth as a leader. "You've accomplished things I never could have imagined," he told her during a quiet moment at the program's 15th anniversary celebration. "But what I'm most proud of is that success hasn't changed who you are at heart." Maya smiled, thinking about all the people who had shaped her journey. "That's because you taught me that leadership isn't about being important, it's about making other people feel important. Every family we help, every volunteer who joins us, every partner who supports our work, they're all part of something bigger than any one person could create alone." The anniversary celebration was held in the same convention center where the 10th anniversary had taken place, but this time over 3,000 people attended. Representatives from all 50 states were present, along with international delegates who were interested in adapting the Healing Hands model for their own countries. Sophia, now the chief medical officer for the program, spoke about the evolution of their preventive care initiatives. Carmen shared statistics about the program's growth and impact. Data told the story of meeting Maya in the pharmacy, a tale that never got old for the audiences who heard it. But the most powerful moment of the evening came when Maya invited several program beneficiaries to share their stories. Alex, the teenager who had sought insulin for his diabetic mother, was now in college studying social work, inspired by his experience with Healing Hands to pursue a career helping others. Marcus, the military child who had asked David about helping without money, had become a peer-by counselor in his high school, supporting other students whose families were dealing with deployment stress and financial hardship. Isabella Santos, the little girl with asthma whose family had been helped after the hurricane, was now a healthy fourth grader who volunteered at local health fairs, teaching other children about managing asthma and other chronic conditions. As Maya listened to these young people speak about how the program had affected their lives, she was struck by a profound realization. The true measure of Healing Hands' success wasn't in the number of prescriptions filled or the amount of money distributed. It was in the way the program had inspired a generation of young people to believe in the power of community support and mutual aid. These children had learned that problems could be solved, that help was available when needed, and that they themselves had the power to make a difference in other people's lives. They were carrying forward the values that David had instilled in the program 15 years earlier, ensuring that the ripples of kindness would continue spreading for generations to come. After the celebration, Maya found herself once again standing in the pharmacy where it all began. Mrs. Chen had retired the previous year, but she had returned for the anniversary event and was waiting by the prescription counter where Maya's journey had started. "Every time I stand in this spot, I think about that little girl with her bag of coins," Mrs. Chen said. "Did you ever imagine it would lead to all this?" Maya shook her head. "I was just trying to help my friend. I had no idea that one moment could change so many lives." "That's the beautiful thing about kindness," Mrs. Chen replied. "It doesn't require grand plans or elaborate strategies. It just requires people who are willing to act when they see a need." As Maya walked home that night, she thought about the future of Healing Hands and her own role in its continued growth. She had been offered positions with federal agencies and international organizations, opportunities that would give her even greater influence in healthcare policy. But she knew that her heart would always be with the grassroots work that had started everything. The program would continue to grow and evolve, adapting to new challenges and serving new populations. Other leaders would emerge to take on greater responsibilities, and Maya would eventually step back from day-to-day operations, but the core mission would remain the same: to ensure that no one had to face medical crises alone, and that every person had access to the care they needed regardless of their ability to pay. The bag of coins was long gone, but its legacy lived on in every prescription filled, every family helped, every child who learned that kindness was the most powerful force for change in the world. And somewhere, in pharmacies and clinics and community centers across the nation, new stories were beginning. New acts of kindness were creating new ripples. And the wave that started with one scared girl and one compassionate stranger continued to grow and spread. touching lives in ways that would never be fully measured or completely understood. 2 years after the 15th grade anniversary celebration, Maya received an unexpected phone call that would open an entirely new chapter in her life. The caller was Dr. Elena Vasquez, the Director of Global Health Initiatives at the World Health Organization, who had been following Healing Hands work through academic publications and international healthcare conferences. Ms. Rodriguez, Dr. Vasquez said, "We have communities in developing countries facing similar challenges to what you've addressed in the United States. Would you consider consulting with us on adapting your model for international implementation?" Maya was intrigued but cautious. The healthcare systems in other countries are very different from ours. "I'm not sure our approach would translate directly." "That's exactly why we need your expertise," Dr. Vasquez replied. "We don't want to impose an American model on other cultures. We want to work with local communities to develop solutions that reflect your principles while respecting their unique circumstances." After extensive discussions with her board of directors, Maya agreed to spend 6 months working with WHO to pilot community-based healthcare support programs in 3 countries: Guatemala, Kenya, and the Philippines. Each location presented distinct challenges that would test her ability to adapt the core principles of Healing Hands to radically different contexts. In Guatemala, Maya worked with indigenous communities in remote mountain villages, where access to any medical care required traveling for hours over dangerous mountain roads. The local economy was based on subsistence farming and small-scale textile production, and most families had no cash income to pay for medications or medical services. Maya quickly realized that the traditional prescription assistance model wouldn't work in a place where there were no pharmacies for miles and where many people relied on traditional healing practices passed down through generations. Instead, she worked with local health promoters to develop a program that combined modern medical training with respect for traditional knowledge. The solution they developed involved training community members to recognize common health problems and provide basic treatment using both modern medicines and traditional remedies that had proven effective. A network of motorcycle riding health workers connected the remote villages to medical centers in larger towns, carrying supplies and providing transportation for serious cases that required hospital care. Maya was particularly moved by her work with a young woman named Esperanza, who reminded her of her younger self in many ways. Esperanza had been caring for her sick grandfather while trying to attend school, walking 4 hours each way to the nearest clinic whenever he needed medical attention. "I want to learn to help people like you do," Esperanza told Maya through a translator. "But I also want to stay in my community and preserve our traditional ways." Working with local educators and health officials, Maya helped establish a program that would allow young people like Esperanza to receive medical training while remaining connected to their communities. The program combined modern healthcare education with training in traditional healing practices, creating a new generation of health workers who could bridge both worlds. In Kenya, Maya encountered a different set of challenges. She worked primarily with women's cooperatives in rural areas where HIV/AIDS had devastated families and left many grandmothers caring for orphaned grandchildren. The healthcare infrastructure was more developed than in Guatemala, but many families still couldn't afford the medications and treatments they needed. The solution here involved creating income-generating programs that allowed families to earn money specifically for healthcare expenses. Working with local artisans, Maya helped establish cooperatives that produced traditional crafts for sale in urban markets and international export. A portion of each woman's earnings was automatically set aside in a healthcare fund that could be used for medical emergencies. One of the most successful projects involved a group of women who had learned to make beautiful jewelry using traditional beadwork techniques. The jewelry was sold through an online platform that Maya helped establish, with buyers around the world purchasing pieces that came with stories about the women who made them and the healthcare programs their purchases supported. Catherine Wanjiku, one of the cooperative leaders, became a close friend and collaborator during Maya's time in Kenya. "You have taught us that we don't need to wait for help from outside," Catherine told Maya. "We can create our own solutions using our skills and our community bonds." The Philippines presented yet another unique situation. Maya worked in communities that had been repeatedly hit by typhoons and flooding, where families often lost everything, including medical records and prescription medications. The challenge here was creating a healthcare support system that could rapidly mobilize during disasters and help communities rebuild their health infrastructure. Working with local officials and international disaster relief organizations, Maya had helped develop a network of community health stations that could be quickly established in schools, churches, and community centers during emergencies. Each station was equipped with essential medications, basic RS, medical supplies, and communication equipment that allowed health workers to coordinate with hospitals and government agencies. The program also included training for local volunteers who could provide first aid, identify medical emergencies, and help families navigate the process of replacing lost medications and medical records. Maya was impressed by the resilience and resourcefulness of the Filipino communities she worked with, particularly their strong traditions of mutual support and collective action. During her time in the Philippines, Maya met Rosa Delgado, a teacher who had lost her home and her daughter's asthma medications during Typhoon Miguel. Rosa had been running from shelter to shelter, trying to find help for her daughter while also coordinating relief efforts for other families in her community. "I understand now why you do this work," Rosa told Maya after they had established a temporary health station in her village. "When people are scared and desperate, having someone step forward to help doesn't just solve their immediate problem. It gives them hope that things will get better." Maya's 6-month international assignment stretched into a full year as the pilot programs proved successful and additional communities requested assistance. The experience challenged her in ways she hadn't expected, forcing her to question assumptions she had developed about healthcare and community support. Working in these 3 countries taught Maya that while the specific solutions needed to vary dramatically based on local conditions, the underlying principles remained constant. People everywhere wanted to take care of their families and their communities. They needed access to healthcare resources, but they also needed to feel empowered to solve their own problems and shape their own futures. When Maya finally returned to the United States, she brought with her new perspectives that would transform Healing Hands once again. She had learned about community cooperation models that were more effective than anything she had seen in America. She had witnessed innovative approaches to preventive care that combined traditional and modern medicine. Most importantly, she had gained a deeper understanding of how healthcare support programs could strengthen entire communities rather than just helping individual families. The international experience also gave Maya a new appreciation for the work she had been doing at home. Despite its flaws, the American healthcare system provided opportunities and resources that were unavailable in many parts of the world. The challenge was figuring out how to make those resources accessible to everyone who needed them. Maya began incorporating lessons from her international work into Healing Hands domestic programs. She established community gardens at several program sites. Inspired by the subsistence farming communities in Guatemala, she developed income-generating programs for low-income families, modeled after the cooperatives she had worked with in Kenya. She created disaster preparedness training programs based on what she had learned in the Philippines. One of the most innovative new programs was called Healing Circles. Small groups of families who met regularly to share resources, provide mutual support, and learn about health and wellness topics. The circles were inspired by the community structures Maya had observed in all 3 countries she had visited, where extended families and neighbors naturally supported each other through difficult times. Carmen, now in her early 60s but still energetic and committed to the program, was fascinated by Maya's international experiences. "It sounds like you discovered that what we've been doing here isn't unique to America," she observed. "Exactly," Maya replied. "People everywhere have the same instincts to help each other. The difference is in how societies organize and support those instincts." Maya's international work also attracted the attention of several major foundations that were interested in supporting global health initiatives. The Rivera Foundation, which David had established with a significant portion of his wealth, received inquiries from organizations in dozens of countries that wanted to adapt the Healing Hands model for their own communities. This led to the creation of Healing Hands International, a separate organization that would focus specifically on supporting community-based healthcare programs around the world. Maya agreed to serve as the founding director, though she insisted on maintaining her primary commitment to the domestic program. The international organization quickly grew beyond what Maya had anticipated. Within 2 years, they were supporting programs in 23 countries, each adapted to local conditions, but united by the same principles of community empowerment and mutual support that had guided Healing Hands from the beginning. One of the most rewarding aspects of the international work was the connections that developed between communities in different countries. Esperanza from Guatemala began corresponding with Catherine from Kenya, sharing ideas about combining traditional and modern healthcare approaches. Rosa from the Philippines exchanged disaster preparedness strategies with community leaders in hurricane-prone areas of the American South. These international connections enriched the domestic program as well. American families participating in Healing Hands learned about healthcare challenges in other parts of the world and often volunteered to support international projects. Young people in the Little Healers program began pen-pal relationships with children in other countries, learning about different cultures while sharing their knowledge about health and wellness. Sophia, who had been following Maya's international work with great interest, proposed a new initiative that would bring these connections to life. She suggested organizing exchange programs that would allow health workers from different countries to spend time learning from each other's programs. The first exchange brought 2 community health workers from Kenya to spend 3 months working with Healing Hands in various American cities. In return, 2 American nurses spent 3 months working in Kenya, learning about traditional healing practices and community-based care models. These exchanges proved enormously beneficial for everyone involved. The Kenyan health workers were amazed by the resources available in American hospitals and clinics, but they were also struck by how isolated many American patients seemed to be from their communities. The American nurses were impressed by the strong family and community support systems they observed in Kenya, but they were also sobered by the lack of basic medical resources. Each system has strengths the other could learn from, reported Dr. Jennifer Liu, one of the American nurses who participated in the Kenya exchange. We have incredible medical technology and specialized treatments, but we could learn a lot about creating supportive communities around healthcare. The exchange programs expanded rapidly, with health workers from the Philippines teaching disaster preparedness in areas prone to natural disasters, and Guatemalan traditional healers sharing knowledge about medicinal plants with American practitioners interested in integrative medicine. Maya found herself traveling constantly, visiting program sites around the world, and facilitating connections between different communities. While she loved this work, she also missed the direct patient contact that had always been at the heart of her calling. During one of her visits home, Maya made a point of spending a day working at the original pharmacy where her journey had begun. The current pharmacist, a young man named Robert Kim, had heard stories about Maya, but had never met her in person. "It's incredible to finally meet you," Robert said. "Mrs. Chen told me all about what happened here, but I always wondered if the stories were exaggerated." Maya laughed. "I'm sure the stories have grown over the years, but the basic facts are true. A scared kid with a bag of coins met a generous stranger, and everything changed from there." As Maya worked alongside Robert that day, helping families with prescription assistance and connecting them with additional resources, she was reminded of why this work mattered so much to her. Every family that came through the pharmacy had a story, struggles that were both unique and universal, dreams that were threatened by circumstances beyond their control. One family that particularly touched Maya was the Johnsons, recent immigrants from Somalia who were struggling to navigate the American healthcare system. Their 8-year-old son Ahmed had been diagnosed with diabetes, and they were overwhelmed by the complexity of managing his condition while also learning English and adapting to a new culture. In our country, we had extended family to help with everything. Ahmed's mother, Fatima, explained through a translator. "Here, we feel very alone." Maya recognized the isolation that Fatima described. It was something she had observed in many of the American communities she worked with, a lack of the natural support systems that existed in more traditional societies. This observation sparked an idea for a new program component that would connect recent immigrant families with established community members who could provide guidance and support. Working with local refugee resettlement agencies, Maya developed a mentorship program that paired newly arrived families with volunteers who had been through similar experiences. The mentors helped with practical matters like understanding insurance forms, finding healthcare providers, but they also provided emotional support and cultural connection. Ahmed's family was matched with the Martinez family, whose daughter had been diabetic for several years and who had immigrated from El Salvador a decade earlier. The two families quickly bonded, with the Martinez family sharing practical tips about managing diabetes, while the Johnson family taught them about Somali culture and traditions. "It's like having family again," Fatima told Maya during a follow-up visit. "Ahmed is learning to manage his diabetes, but more importantly, he's learning that we're not alone in this new country." The mentorship program became one of Healing Hands' most successful initiatives, eventually expanding to serve not just immigrant families, but any families dealing with new medical diagnoses or major life transitions. The program embodied the principle that healing involved more than just medical treatment. It required community connection and mutual support. As Maya approached her 35th birthday, she reflected on how much her understanding of healthcare and community had evolved since that day in the pharmacy 23 years earlier. She had learned that health was determined not just by access to medical services, but by the strength of social connections, the availability of economic opportunities, and the presence of hope for the future. This holistic understanding of health influenced every aspect of Healing Hands' work. Programs now included components addressing housing stability, educational support, job training, and mental health services. The organization had evolved from a prescription assistance program into a comprehensive community support network. David, now in his 80s, but still mentally sharp and actively involved in the program, often marveled at how far the organization had grown. "When I paid for Sophia's medicine that day," he told Maya, "I thought I was just helping one sick child. I never imagined it would lead to programs in dozens of countries, helping hundreds of thousands of people." "That's the thing about kindness," Maya replied. "You can never predict where it will lead. You just have to trust that doing the right thing will somehow create more opportunities to do the right thing." The conversation took place during the planning meetings for Healing Hands' 20th anniversary celebration, which would be the largest event in the organization's history. Representatives from all 50 states and 37 countries were expected to attend, along with hundreds of families who had been helped by the program over the years. Maya was particularly excited about one special guest who would be attending. Sophia had recently been elected to the state legislature, running on a platform of healthcare reform and community empowerment. Her victory had been partly attributed to the grassroots network of support she had built through her years of community health work. "From sick child to state legislator," Maya teased Sophia during one of their planning calls. "Not bad for someone who almost couldn't afford her antibiotics." "And from coin-counting kid to international health advocate," Sophia replied. "I'd say we've both exceeded expectations." Carmen, who would be retiring after the anniversary celebration, was working on a comprehensive history of the organization that would be published to commemorate the milestone. The book would include stories from program participants around the world, photographs documenting the program's growth, and analysis of the impact that community-based healthcare programs could have on public health outcomes. "What strikes me most about all these stories," Carmen told Maya, as they reviewed drafts of the book, "is how similar they are despite coming from such different places. Whether it's a family in rural Guatemala or inner-city Detroit, people everywhere want the same basic things: to take care of their loved ones, to feel secure in their communities, and to have hope for their children's futures." End quote. Maya nodded, thinking about all the families she had met over the years. "And they all have the capacity to help each other if we just create the right opportunities and support systems." The anniversary celebration was held over 3 days, with workshops, presentations, and cultural exchanges that showcased the diversity of communities that Healing Hands served. The event culminated in a gala dinner where Maya delivered a keynote address reflecting on the program's journey and future vision. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of 5, 000 people from around the world. Maya felt the weight of responsibility and the power of possibility that had defined her work for more than Bran. 2 decades. 20 years ago, she began. A 12-year-old girl walked into a pharmacy with a plastic bag full of coins, hoping to buy medicine for her sick friend. She had no idea that this simple act of love would connect her to a network of compassion that would eventually span the globe. Maya paused, seeing David and Carmen in the front row, their faces beaming with pride. That girl couldn't have imagined that her desperation would become determination, that her fear would become faith, and that her small act of caring would inspire thousands of other people to step forward and help. She continued. But perhaps the most important lesson we've learned is that the girl in the pharmacy wasn't unique. In every community we serve, there are people willing to sacrifice for others, strangers ready to step forward and help, and children who understand intuitively that we're all connected to each other." End quote. The audience rose in sustained applause as Maya concluded her remarks, but she knew that the real measure of success wouldn't be found in the applause or accolades. It would be found in the communities that continued the work long after the celebration ended, in the children who grew up believing that healthcare was a right rather than a privilege, and in the countless small acts of kindness that would ripple outward into a future none of them could fully envision.